OpenAI is back to their old ways. They are using their old product strategy playbook to drive releases, which means that they're releasing second, even when they have the feature almost certainly in the can already. So if you remember back, Gemini released just last week a new multimodal art model called Gemini Flash Experimental. They've labeled it like images in AI Studio there for Gemini users. It's very, very good. People have been using it to do product photo shoots where they pull the product out of someone's hand and they mood light it. People have been using it to do outfit try-ons. People have been using it to literally edit an image with text. Like you can change the background of a wall, you can change an object in the image, and it can be photorealistic. Fantastic model. Well, OpenAI actually talked about true multimodal, where the model will take text as a first-class input and images as a first-class input and output. And they did that months ago. And so to have Google beat them is not something they wanted the public to think about. And so a week later, they drop their multimodal model. They call it 4.0, which you already have. 4.0 is 4.0. But they've upgraded 4.0 under the surface with a really, really different image model. It is natively multimodal now. You can feel the difference. And what's interesting is these are not equivalent models. So I asked the exact same prompt of both of them, and I got really interesting quality differences. I got a better lean toward photorealism in Google Gemini. I got a lean toward creativity and artfulness in OpenAI. And OpenAI was worse at interpreting a color edit suggestion than Gemini. Gemini correctly understood I was only referring to an area of the image, whereas OpenAI assumed I was referring to the entire background. But Google Gemini critically misunderstood the actual composition of what I was asking for. And OpenAI did not. OpenAI understood what I was actually asking it to create. Neither of them is perfect. I'm using that example to show that you have to do your own testing, and you'll probably have to try both to see what you want. I want to take us back to that strategy piece, though. At the end of the day, it is frustrating to me that OpenAI, a consumer company, a company that Sam Altman gave an entire interview on last week to Stratechery, emphasizing how much of a consumer company they are, and they're not releasing the great stuff they have when it's ready for customers. They're sitting there staring at competitors and going second so that they can try and claim a PR victory. That's not customer obsessed. I don't think they should be doing that. I think if you have it ready, you should release it. And I think that great customer-facing companies historically have done that. When they have the right product ready, they release it on their time. And this is a real established pattern with OpenAI where it's almost like they're playing inside baseball with the other model makers. They talk about being a consumer product, and they are. They have 400 million active users per month. But in a lot of ways, they don't act like a grown-up consumer-facing company yet. They don't have the consumer obsession that defines companies like Apple, that defines companies like Amazon, even Netflix. Instead, they tend to look at the other model makers and they can get into a bit of a standoff. In fact, I strongly suspect the exact timing of ChatGPT 5 and Claude 3 will be interrelated. Or at the very least, ChatGPT 5's release timing will be tied into another model release from Google, from Meta, from Anthropic, maybe even from DeepSeek. And if that's the case, it's yet again going to be confirmation that OpenAI really is looking not to the consumer to drive their release cadence, but to other model makers. It's not a mature product company motion. It's something that probably is going to need to shift. Because ultimately, the average person doesn't care who released the image model first. My grandmother doesn't care whether Google released it last week or OpenAI released it this week. She's going to care if it makes the photo on her phone. Is it good or not good? And OpenAI has a huge advantage there. They have the product surface that most people familiar with AI understand to use for AI. Everybody knows ChatGPT, and the 4.0 model is the baseline model. So far, so good. That makes sense. So why worry? about exactly when Google releases stuff? Why worry about exactly when Anthropic releases stuff? Why not just release what you got to your consumers? That's my hot take. I think OpenAI is queuing their product strategy around other competitors incorrectly. And I think they should be focused more on consumers. I think that's to their interest as a company long term. And I think the things they're worried about, sort of losing the PR battle for a cycle or two, are not that big a deal. Like if you can imagine the reverse where OpenAI released this when it was ready, maybe a couple of weeks back, maybe a month back, and then Google comes along and they release theirs later on, it's not really a PR difference. It doesn't really make a difference. And so I think that we really need to see some grown-up consumer-focused behavior from some of these model makers now that we are seeing a much larger consumer footprint. If we expect AI to be in people's houses, if we expect it to be on people's phones, if we expect it to be a daily, hourly touch for people, we have to act like that when we build and release products. And right now, it's feeling much more like a Y Combinator who releases first, very Silicon Valley insider kind of thing. It's not super helpful to customers. So that's my hot take. But that shouldn't detract from the fact that this is a great model. Great people worked on it. The teams at both of these companies, at Gemini and at OpenAI, are fantastic. They're shipping great stuff. And they should be proud. Like these are really hard challenges that they're solving with multimodal. And I think that we've taken a massive leap forward in image generation. Again, like to my video yesterday, it's hard to describe that unless you're really clear and specific. Like if you can say before, you could put a Coke can in someone's hand in a drawing, but then you couldn't move it around. The Coke can was like frozen to the hand. And now you can just edit it and move the Coke can over here with just your written text. That makes the light bulbs go off. Now people understand. So I do think we need to get better at talking about this stuff. I don't want my critique of the product strategy to come off as critiquing the individuals who did the hard work, because it's an amazing model. Like it's incredible work that they've done. So I'll probably write up more on it later on, but I wanted to throw it out there. What do you think? Have you tried the 4.0 model? How does it compare to Gemini?